Alrighty, folks. Contenders and pretenders. This is always an interesting part of the show, and can either prove that we are, boy geniuses or donkey brains. So, we picked a few teams. We didn't want to go the obvious ones, right? We didn't want to say, the Chiefs. We didn't want to say the Ravens. We didn't want to say the Bucks or the Packers. Obviously, those teams are contenders. That's why they're, one of the best teams or the best teams in football. So we wanted to go teams that are either on the outside looking in or in those wild card spots, or teams that are maybe just playing, above what we really think they are. So let's start in the AFC, and let's start with a team that has been, really hot topic. They're winners of 6 straight, the New England Patriots. I'm going to start with Jeff here. Jeff, they're playing good defense. Their offense is efficient, but they're not, doing anything wild. They're able to run the ball. They have one of, the best coach of all time. For you, are they a contender or a pretender?
I'm scared that they might win the Super Bowl. I'm very scared about that. Like it just very, very if there's anybody I trust to mess shit up in the playoffs, it's Bill Belichick. Look, I don't think Mac Jones should be getting as much praise as he's getting. Troy Aikman is not someone you should trust in terms of quarterback knowledge. Just look at his career. I other than that though, the Patriots are playing lights out. They're dominating people now. If they beat the Bills soundly, you know what? Just place your bets at that point. They really look awesome right now. They look like, Tom Brady Patriots, where they're coming into form late in the season, figuring things out. Everything looks really tight and clean, and they're just dominating and ruthless. They look so scary, man. They look terrifying. I would not want to play them.
Wow. All right. That was kind of unexpected, in my opinion. Bradshaw, which way are you going with them? Because clearly Jeff has them as a contender.
I think they're obviously a solid playoff team. I don't think they're a contender this season. I don't trust. I've never really trusted a team that has to rely on their defense as much as they do, because in the playoffs, you got to score points at some point. As much as the defense can contain the other team, you got to score some points. Not that the Patriots have had trouble doing that these last few games, but I'm just concerned when a team has a couple weeks to prepare. It's not the grind of the regular season. Will they be able to do some of the things they're doing on offense? Will they be able to rely on Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson to get the ball, to carry the ball? I'm not sure. They beat up on a pretty badly injured Tennessee Titans team. I don't know how close that game would have been. I don't know how much closer that game would have been if they had AJ Brown, Julio Jones, and Derrick Henry, but it's certainly been a lot closer than we saw on Sunday. I think they're a firm playoff team. I just don't have them as a contender this season. I think there's a couple teams still in the AFC that are just a step above them. I think Buffalo. We'll see. I guess we'll see this week with Buffalo, but definitely Kansas City. And I don't think they're even close to the top team in the end. I think the best teams in the NFC would just take them out behind the woodshed and put them out of their misery. So I'm not going to have the Patriots as a contender this season. I think next season, Mac Jones a little bit more experience. Mac Jones has been great. I just don't think this season they're a contender.
Yeah, I'm going to say they're a pretender as well. I think it's so hard to a rookie quarterback is number one in the Super Bowl, right? A rookie quarterback. What's the most successful rookie quarterback season we've had in a while? Probably Russell Wilson with the Seahawks, right? When they ended up going, they went to the NFC Championship, but I think they went to the divisional round at least. I think it's tough to play this style of football offensively when it's really short stuff and just relying on yards after the catch with receivers who aren't really known for yards after the catch as well. And these 2 tight end sets, and relying on defense, sort of what Bradshaw said, which is kind of a crapshoot on any given Sunday. You look at some of their wins, really beating up on some bad teams here, and some of their losses, aren't anything too hot. Dolphins in week 1. I get it's week 1. The Saints, too. We've seen what the Saints have become, right? And then you think of the 2 best teams they faced, Buccaneers at home in a rainy weather game. And sure, Mac Jones was fine and Brady wasn't anything spectacular. They still lose that game. And then at home against the Cowboys, and those are 2 good teams, but you're losing those. And then other than that, you mentioned the Titans, where they beat up on the Titans. Those are with their 3, Titans without their 3 best offensive players. I think – Jeff, you kind of mentioned, the Bills. We have to see how they do against the Bills. And if that's a different story, if they really make that competitive or they even win that game, maybe I'll change my mind. But for now, I think they're a pretender. I think I still need to see more from Mac Jones. And when it comes playoff time, am I trusting, Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith against some of these defenses? I don't know if I am, quite yet. So I'm going to hold off on them. They've had a nice season. J.C. Jackson's doing his thing. Matthew Judon's been a really nice surprise and has been fantastic. One of the best edge rushers in football right now. For me right now, they're a pretender. All right, let's continue in the AFC. Well, we know our other analyst here, Luca Moy, would clearly have him as a contender. So shout out Luca on that one. But this team has been a really pleasant surprise, I think, this season. Bradshaw, what do you think about the Cincinnati Bengals? Are they a contender or a pretender?
What are we talking contender about? Are we talking like Super Bowl contender? Or are we talking about just, like solid, like could make like the AFC Championship game?
I think could make some noise in the playoffs.
I think they could win a game. I think they could certainly win a game and then threaten to make a divisional game competitive. Like I don't think they're like, obviously they're not a Super Bowl contender. I don't think any of us are going to say that. But I think they could win a wild card game and then, depending on who they face in the divisional round, make some noise there and, keep it competitive until the fourth quarter. Again, like the Patriots, I just don't think it's this season. I think you need like maybe another year. Like I like what they're doing. And I mean, I don't like the last couple of weeks where they've been running it a lot more with Joe Mixon. I like Joe Mixon as a player, but I think when you have, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd, you let that you let that be your offense, and you have, no pun intended, you let Joe mix in throughout the game. I just don't think, just not this season. I want to see more from them. I don't trust Zach Taylor to, call a good offense for what we've seen so far in the regular season. I want to see them, air it out a little bit more. And I want to their defense has been great though. I've loved what they've done on defense this season. And then hopefully they can spend a little bit of money with Joe Burrow's rookie contract and, still complement that team. But no, not this season. I think this season max you get is like a wild card win and then a close divisional game.
That's fair. Yeah. And when we say contenders and pretenders, I feel like pretenders, like, no, there's no shot they're going to lose in the first round. They might not even make the playoffs. Contender, it's hard for us to say, oh, they've got a chance to win the Super Bowl. But I think contender is more like they can make some noise. They can knock off one of those teams that we think is a favorite. And, if all the cards align, there's a chance they could make it to a Super Bowl. Stuff like that is more like, hey, that's contender. I'm not saying, hey, they're the Tampa Bay Bucks, anything like that. But I think that's all fair, Bradshaw. Jeff, what about you? Contender or pretender on the Bengals?
I think they're a contender. I definitely think they can make noise in the playoffs. I see them as a bad matchup for a lot of teams. The Ravens, we've already seen they can beat them. Yep. Especially the Ravens defense being such a liability right now. I could see them taking them right out. And then, even against a team like the Bills, I think their defense is good enough to at least slow them down. Right. I mean, Josh Allen could have an immaculate game, Stephon Diggs, obviously absolute monster. We're not talking enough about him this year, I don't think. But I just do think that the Bengals can keep pace with them offensively. I think their defense is good enough. And the fact that their offense is varied, the fact that you can use, the ground game to punish these more pass defensive heavy teams in the AFC, I think you can see them winning a few games. Like they could be like, the Titans of a couple of years ago where they steal a few and they're like, oh my gosh, they're getting to the AFC Championship. I wouldn't peg them to beat an NFC team though. I just think that they're like, those teams are elite. I'm sorry, man. They're just elite all around teams. It's like the one team, obviously I see them getting crushed by though is Kansas City, just because Patrick Mahomes, he's going to dice you up, man. He's the best player in the league. But other than that though, I see them being like strong contenders. I could see them upsetting just about anybody else.
I like it. I have them as a contender too. And I think we've seen enough from Burrow. We, the connection with Chase, we like these receivers. And I think you mentioned Mixon, Bradshaw. I think it just tells you they're balanced. And I think they can beat you in different ways. We saw this week, Joe Burrow didn't have to do a lot. And obviously the Steelers are crap. Their defense is all banged up. Mixon was just a dog, man. He just kicked the Steelers' ass up and down the field. And it happened on the first possession. I think he went for 32 yards on the first run. And it's just like, all right, this is what they're going to do. And that's what they did all game. And their defense has been really, they were horrible a few years back. I remember I think when this podcast had a different name and we would talk about fantasy and we would basically pick any running back who was going against the Bengals as who's going to be the stud. And that was it. They couldn't do a thing. And Najee Harris was, limited in this game. Obviously, Steelers offensive line is crap, but they're just good all over. They got some nice pieces in the secondary. They've got some young linebackers who have been pretty helpful. Trey Hendrickson has been, I think he's got a sack in like 7 straight games or something ridiculous. Sam Hubbard, a hometown boy for them. He's been fine. In their offensive line, that was a big question mark, right? Their O-line is what basically had, Joe Burrow to get surgery because they couldn't stop, anybody rushing the pass. And dude, they've been fine. And that was the question mark, right? Oh, Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase. They go, with Jamar Chase, they go get some help. Jonah Williams is now healthy. He's been fine. Riley Reef on the right side has been fine. I like them to upset some teams there, right? If they get, they're going to be probably a wild card team because I'm assuming the Ravens are probably going to end up winning that division. But yeah, man, well, if it's an AFC South team, even if it's, a New England team, I think they could, make some noise. I like what they're doing there. And I do see what you mean, Bradshaw. Like, hey, another year away where they maybe go, tackle or guard in that first round and really bolster up that offensive line, or they go draft another corner or somebody to, really limit teams from airing it out on them. But I like the direction this team's going, and I'll label them as contender to start. All right, one more team in the AFC, and it pains me to do this because, man, I love this quarterback so much. I'm going to label them as a pretender, and that's the Los Angeles Chargers right now. Their defense, it hurts me right now. They have, similar to what we talked about with the Rams earlier, is you got so many pieces that could really make this team go. You have a defensive-minded head coach, which could really get this defense rolling. They're just not doing it, and it's they can't stop the run. The Broncos are beating up on them, which is tough to see. And Herbert's super talented. Obviously, they've got some wide receivers. Their O-line has been great, right? Rashawn Slater's an absolute stud up front. I just don't see it. I don't see it right now, and it hurts me to say that because earlier we're like, hey, this team can make some noise. Herbert's balling out, right? They've got some good pieces. And the one number I look at, and I mentioned this the other day in the group chat we had, is in their losses, Herbert's adjusted yards per attempt, 5.3. That's crap. That's really bad. And in wins, 9.1. It seems like when they start getting tough defenses, they don't let him go wild, which is what they should do. They should say, air the ball out. You have a cannon of an arm. Try and make these really tough throws. And when they're against good defenses, they just kind of shrink down and go target Eckler, target, Jared Cook, 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. And it hurts that offense as a whole. And it gets, defenses to come down more and stop the run. And that's what sort of happened a little bit. Denver's a really good defense. Eckler couldn't run the ball at all. You're relying on Justin Herbert to make big time throws, but there wasn't any big time throws to make because they're not testing anything downfield. And that worries me. I feel like they're playing a little scared sometimes where it's almost like you got this guy with talent, let him go. And that's sort of what, Andy Reid had earlier on with Patrick Mahomes is saying, you got a guy with all his talent, let him do his thing. And if there's mistakes there, it's going to happen. It's football, right? And they just worry me right now as a whole. And I think, again, it's a year away, which kind of sucks to see because they were really exciting to start the year. And now it's kind of dwindling down. Bradshaw, what do you think about the Chargers? Are they a pretender or contender?
I'm going to tentatively go contender. I think just because we've seen the peak of what they can be. Like early in the season, we saw like what this offense looks like when they're really going. We saw the defense, like even when they weren't playing great, they still looked solid. They were still slowing down like Patrick Mahomes, even though like Patrick Mahomes still had a good game. Like they still were slowing them. They held them to like 24 points. We've seen how good they can be, and I think they can still reach that peak. It's just they just look so bad right now because I just don't know. I don't know what their plan is on offense. Like you were just talking about, I don't know what they're trying to do offensively. Again, you have Justin Herbert, you have a guy who can really sling the ball, and they're just not going down the field as much as they probably should be. I'm just a little. I think that's my only. It's kind of what my concern with Zach Taylor was. Just can you call the correct offense for the personnel that you have? Not the correct offense, but like an offense that would make you a little more effective. But I think just because we've seen how high they can go, we've seen their peak. I think I'm being sucked into like what their peak is and what we've seen so far. Maybe they won't touch that again. Maybe they might not even make the playoffs. What are they, 6-5 or something? Like they might not even make the playoffs this season. That would be a massive failure for them this year. I mean, they kind of have not a cake schedule the rest of the way, but you still have the Giants, Texans, you get the Broncos again at home. You get the Raiders, they're not good. So I think you could probably they'll probably make the playoffs, and I think those games are where you'll start to like kind of gain some more confidence and kind of you can see like, okay, this is what our offense should be. We should be throwing the ball down the field more. We shouldn't be just all right, hand off to Eckler. But we've seen that all season. Like we've seen them call these weird runs to Austin Eckler on like second and long. You're like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the point? Like, I'm very that's my own one concern. Again, same thing with the Bengals is just like, is the play calling gonna let their offensive talent down? But yeah, again, we've seen the peak of this team, and I think at their peak, they're one of the best teams in the AFC. They're not close to that right now. They're not close to their peak at the moment.
It honestly seemed, remember last year when a few of us, I know myself included, we were like, go get Brian Dable and make this offense legit. And then they go get Brandon Staley, they go defensive minded. And we're like, you know what, that's fine. He's an innovative coach. He's interesting. And we've seen this season alone, basically any single fourth and short, if they're at their own 30, they're going for it. He just goes nuts with that stuff, which is good to see. But their offense in moments still seems like it's Anthony Lynn running the show, which is absolute crap. So I do hope, for Herbert's sake and for the Chargers, because it's an exciting team. I hope they make the playoffs next year. I hope they just say straight up and go get us the best offensive mind, whether it be college or maybe somebody who's a quarterback's coach for one of these really good offensive minded teams. Make him your OC. Let Staley worry about the defense and every fourth down call and just go wild. That's what I would love to see, because it's hard to see a player with this much talent and they kind of just shrink down what he can do in certain moments. And I hate seeing that.
Well, it's interesting because they're still second in offensive DVOA. They're still second. Like they're still a good offense. And again, like that's with these last couple of weeks of them looking kind of crummy. By the way, the Bucks are like so far and away the best team in offensive DVOA. It's kind of nuts. But yeah, like they're still, again, like the peak we've seen from them is so high. I refuse to give up on that yet. I think they can still get there.
And you mentioned it's also weeks where they just go stupid against the Steelers, where they look unreal, right? And their offense is just flying. The Eagles, we said, hey, this is a bounce back game for Justin Herbert. It was. He was unbelievable. And then I wonder if he didn't have these crappy little games where they just do target short stuff, what their DVOA would be, or their offensive DVOA would be. Jeff, what about you? Your Chargers, man. Contender or pretender?
My Chargers. I don't really have much to add. I think you guys really covered it well. I think Matt Bradshaw makes a good point. I think we've seen their ceiling. My thing is though, is like, so I see that as more like a long-term thing. I think, next season we'll probably see more of that. I think they'll learn from their mistakes, definitely. I think that's something to look for long-term, but I do find, generally speaking, the NFL can have some variance, right? There can be some randomness. And I just find like when a team is kind of going into the playoffs bad, you kind of got to judge them on their form, right? Their most recent form is what you want to go by. And their most recent form has been less than impressive. And I also just see them getting into a bad matchup, right? Because they're probably going to be one of the lower seeds in the AFC. If they do make it, they'll face the Bills or the Patriots. I don't see them winning either of those matchups. I think they get destroyed or they lose in a very competitive matchup. But I think those teams have the edge over them. I think they have their numbers. So I don't see them going far. I'm saying they're pretenders, at least for this year.
All right. Okay, let's move on to the NFC now. And we start with the NFC East leading Dallas Cowboys. And Bradshaw, get me started here on Dallas. Contender or pretender?
I'd still definitely have them as a contender. They're such a talented team, especially offensively. I like what Kellen Moore's done for them this year, calling plays. I mean, even these last couple of weeks, like we can't even judge them on these last couple of weeks because they, like, especially in their most recent game, they didn't have Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb, and that still came right down to the wire. Like their offense is still really, really good. I know their defense can be a bit like they rely a lot on turnovers, which are very random, but I still like their defense as a whole. I like the talent they have. I still think this is a team that can absolutely make noise in the playoffs. Like this is a team that can absolutely hang with some of the best. We saw it. Again, week one's week one. Teams have been different since then, but You mean it's hard to tell me that the Bucs are much better or worse than they were in week one, and they hung with the Bucs in week one, and I think the Cowboys have only gotten better since then. I definitely have them as a contender. Maybe not Super Bowl yet, but I definitely could see them reaching like NFC Championship game if things break right for them. I think if they run into like Green Bay, they're kind of done. But if you run into like the Cardinals, you can beat I think they can beat the Cardinals. I sure as hell think they can beat the Cardinals. You can beat the Rams. I don't know. I think they can pretty much take anybody except for probably Green Bay, in my opinion.
Jeff, what about you? Contender, pretender on Dallas?
Yeah, I would jump off of that and say it's either Green Bay or the Buccaneers, right? Like because the Buccaneers, I think offensively can kind of match them pretty easily, right? But I think that's actually a great shout. Like they might be the worst matchup for the Cardinals, and yeah, like what I mean, it's crazy to say that though, right? Because we were on and on about how stacked the NFC is, right? And I think originally too, we were saying I think Cowboys were kind of looking like maybe the third or fourth best team in the NFC, and obviously they've trailed off a little bit. But to Bradshaw's point, a lot of that is likely due to injuries, right? And I think when they're fully healthy, they're pretty tough. I definitely think though that their defense did benefit off of a few lucky turnovers, including Stephon Diggs, or excuse me,
Trayvon Diggs.
Thank you. Sorry, blanking. I'm getting old, guys. It's happening real fast. But yeah, I think they got a little bit lucky with that. Sorry to say that, but it's just like a lot of those tips were just like falling right into his hands. Like that's cool and everything. It's fun to have that little interception streak, but not every single one of those was like him making a play on the ball. But their defense obviously is good. It's a very good defense. I'm not necessarily doubting them, but the fact that they got those turnovers, were able to control the ball and score more points with their explosive offense, just benefited them. I don't see that happening again because it's kind of dried up now for them. And I see them making noise for sure. Again, if they get the right bounces, they can do well. And maybe the Packers get upset. That does happen from time to time. The one seed can get upset. And if they stay injured, then hey, it's only going to, they can only stay in that world for so long. It might not work out for them. I could see the Cowboys making the Super Bowl potentially. But I have to say they're at least a contender. I think they win at least one game, if not three, if not all three.
It'd be a lot bigger contender for me if they used Tony Pollard more.
That's what I was going to say. That's the reason, not necessarily just Tony Pollard. I'm going to label them as a pretender right now. I think the defense has, both of you guys touched on it, is a lot of luck, right? And I still don't think they're good. They're basically relying on a rookie in Micah Parsons, who's a kind of a hybrid type of player, to be their most outstanding defensive player this year, creating pressure. Trayvon Diggs, eventually, real fans are going to see that interceptions don't mean that you're having a fantastic season. It's a lot of luck, right? It's a lot of him getting beat, or, the receiver not making a catch and him coming down with it, or just certain situations where maybe the best corners are the ones who don't get a lot of interceptions because nobody's targeting them because they're locking down their receiver.
He still had it, but he still had a good season though. He still had a good season. He's still been good.
He's been fine. I'm not going to, this isn't the shit on Trayvon Diggs show. I'm just saying, like early on, people are going defensive player of the year. And it's like, let's hold your horses. Okay. And the coaching hurts them a lot. Kellen Moore's a nice piece. McCarthy sucks. McCarthy's horrible as a coach. And his clock management is the worst thing I've ever seen. And he does it week in and week out. Zeke Elliott is banged up. Still, he should be your RB2. Tony Pollard is a way more explosive player and a better player catching the ball out of the backfield, which is what this team sort of needs. You don't have to waste these downs on Zeke Elliott doing runs and draws up the middle. And that's what I think worries me a little bit, is the defense is going to get a matchup in that first round, whether it be somebody like a San Francisco, and maybe I'm being biased, somebody like a Minnesota, where they can control the clock too a little bit, and they can make some plays and have some offense as well, kind of be just as explosive, and find those weaknesses in that Cowboys defense and find some weaknesses with their coaching and kind of hurts them. And again, maybe I look like an idiot. I wouldn't be surprised if, Dak goes crazy, because I love Dak. He's been fantastic this year, and he has the weapons to do it. And they pull off some victories, and they upset, in Arizona. They upset a Green Bay. Something about it right now, and maybe it's just the coaching is really grinding my gears, and they should have gone a different direction. Mike McCarthy's looking like a bum. That's what's hurting me right now to do that. And I know I'm the odd one out. And I know Luka would probably have them as a contender as well. But there's something about it right now for me that, worries me. Especially when they were pretty much at full health as well. And they get basically trounced at home, with Denver as well. Denver's got a good defense, but that offense isn't anything special, and they ran up and down the field on them. Maybe it's a hot take. I'll probably look foolish on that one when the season comes to an end. Something we're looking foolish on, and they look foolish for going all in right now, is the Los Angeles Rams. I'll start on this one. I'm going to still say they're a contender. I just think you're too talented. And what it reminds me a little bit about is sort of last year. Remember the Bucs were having these weird games where they're talented, they're so good, and they're losing to, the Bears, and they're just having really odd games. Atlanta, not a good team last year, Bradshaw. You know that. And Atlanta's,
still not a good team.
Yeah, beating them by double digits at half. And it's something like that where they're just haven't found the groove yet. Right, Odell's trying to fit into this offense right away. He's not Robert Woods, and I feel like they're missing Robert Woods because he does so many different things well. One, he's an unbelievable blocker, and also just these gadget type of plays where the defense has to shift in a certain way where it creates holes for Henderson or creates Cooper Kupp one-on-one coverage, stuff like that. They're going to have to adjust to. They're going to have to adjust to finding ways to get Aaron Donald, where it's not three guys on him, it's just two guys. And Von Miller, who's usually had two guys on him his whole entire career, where it's just one-on-one, right? And they just have to fine-tune everything a little bit. And I don't think it's, too little too late because they're still that talented, and I'm not going to give up on them quite yet. So I'll label them a contender for now. Stafford needs to get healthy. And that's an important piece of the puzzle as well. Because clearly if he's dealing with all these injuries that, everybody was talking about, on Sunday or on Saturday, whatever it was, that's trouble, especially when, you look at the draft and you look at the money you spent. That could be disappointing if you're, a first round exit. Jeff, where are you on this Rams team?
I think that Bucks comparison is pretty interesting, but the only thing is, the TB12 method, will probably protect him from that chronic back pain. Sorry, that is just scary. When you see that middle of the season, yeah, Matthew Stafford's like in his mid-30s. He's got chronic back pain. Like he's going to be in a wheelchair in a few years. Like that's terrifying, man. Elbow pain too. And I think you can actually see, like, you remember when he first came out of the draft and we were like saying, oh my God, like the arm, and you could see his arm is just incredible. The ball just flies off his fingers. You don't see that as much anymore, not as consistently. Right. And I do think, especially if he can if they can manage that, maybe, run the ball, but more like kind of, ice up that elbow and everything like that. They can be that team. And I think defensively, you gotta think like they're just so talented defensively. Like you can't not make some noise in the playoffs. I have to label them as a contender pretty much for that reason. I think Sean McVay will figure it out, but you mentioned it earlier in this episode, Nolan. Dude, go for it. What the hell is wrong with you? Like you have the most explosive offense and it's all down to you, bro. Like how do you not have confidence in yourself? You did this with Jared Goff. Like just go for it, dude. That is the main thing more than anything to me that will hold them back in the playoffs, because I just sense another team will take that risk more than they will, right? What's tough for them is they're not going to win their division, I don't think, at this rate. I think Arizona is going to cakewalk it into potentially number one seed, but at the very least, they're going to win that division. And they kind of made it easy for them, unfortunately. And it's mostly been down the stretch here, which does give you some concern. But I just think that they're too damn talented to not win at least one game, maybe two. And I think if they can come playoff time, they can definitely make some noise. I think then, that's the real prediction, which a lot of us made, would be correct with them coming out of the NFC.
Yeah. And I think, their defense, remember last year where their defense kind of turned it on later in the year. Maybe we get that a little bit because we haven't seen it yet. We haven't really seen this defense really click. And then last year it was like, dude, this defense is legit. And they just made Russell Wilson and the Seahawks in that playoff game look horrible. Darius Williams was showing up. Their offense, in the first couple of weeks, super explosive. Haven't seen a lot yet. I think Matt Stafford is going to have to get it together because I did see numbers. I think he's had he's had 5 better graded seasons in Detroit than he has this year. Under pressure, he's the worst quarterback in football right now, worse than Trevor Lawrence, which is it's something's not right with the Rams right now. But I think we're just relying on talent, and it's like they're going to figure it out. Bradshaw, where are you on the Rams?
You guys basically said everything I was going to say there. I love the talent. I still like Sean McVay. I don't care what you guys say. I think he's still one of the best play callers in the NFL. Obviously the fourth down stuff is frustrating, but I mean, the man's come in and turned this team around for like immediately, and he's had a winning record, I think, every season except for one. And he was great with Jared Goff, and Jared Goff is a bum. So I mean, I still have them as a contender. I still think it just comes down to Matt Stafford's health, and if Matt Stafford's healthy, they'll be fine. Could absolutely make some noise. If not, they're kind of screwed. No matter how good their defense gets better, if it gets better, doesn't really matter if Matt Stafford's not playing well.
That's fair, and that's the thing. I think Jeff and I are in the same boat. It's like, yeah, he's a great, great at designing plays. He's an offensive-minded guy, but it's like you think usually these offensive-minded guys, and that you nailed it on the head. Like it's frustrating. Like, got to go for it in these situations. Let's go to his buddy in San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers are on tear right now. Deebo Samuel is one of the most exciting players in football. And their defense kind of figuring out a little bit. Again, Jimmy G, tough one. But again, it seems like the same I'm not going to say the same Niner team that went to the Super Bowl. They're running the ball like crazy, and they're running it with efficiency with whoever's, playing tailback. Their offensive line's one of the best in football. Trent Williams is having a stupid good year. And they're creating a little bit of pressure. Nick Bosa is coming along a little bit. Where are we on the Niners, Bradshaw? Contender or pretender?
I'm still gonna go pretender for now. I just think if they run into it, I think there are just too many teams that'll give them trouble if they run into them in the playoffs. I know their defense has been really solid, and obviously they can control the clock. I'm just a little concerned that just they run into the bad matchup. Jimmy Garoppolo has actually not been that bad this season. He's had a pretty nice year. I'm interested to see after this season who takes a chance on him and what kind of offense they try to fit him into. But I don't have them as a contender this season. I just think there are too many teams. You go with Green Bay, Tampa Bay. Even if they run into the Rams, I'm just not convinced that they'll get in a playoff game. I think there's too many teams that could beat them in a 1-game playoff. I had them as my most disappointing team last week, and then look at this, they're on a tear and they're so good. But yeah, no, not this season. I think there's something to build on here. I think they have a lot of talent offensively, and I think bringing in Trey Lance next season when he's a little more experienced, I'm excited for that. But not this year.
Jeff, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with Bradshaw. I'm going to say that they're a pretender. And I agree on the Jimmy Garoppolo point. It's just for me, I see him as he's probably going to be the worst quarterback, most unreliable quarterback in the NFC playoffs, maybe in the entire playoffs generally to me. But Bradshaw makes great points, obviously as always, but he makes great points. They're very talented. George Kittle, incredible. Deebo Samuel is carrying this team. I mean, good Lord, I've never seen a wide receiver do it like this. It's pretty awesome, pretty nuts. I think he's going to be hurt this week or for the coming weeks. Hopefully he stays healthy because he's going to really help them if they do make the playoffs. My thing is you have Jimmy Garoppolo, and if you get into any kind of shootout, man, not that I'm saying he can't necessarily do it, but it's also the fact that I don't think the defense can slow the other offenses down. You have Tom Brady playing lights out, Aaron Rodgers, MVP level, Dak Prescott, pretty much MVP level, and their offense is just too well-rounded. It's hard for me to see them stick with them in a race. It's really hard for me to see that. As much as they're building a lot of momentum, it seems like they're kind of becoming, at least on offense, who we thought they could be. The defense just isn't up to par with the other teams, and I think that's what's really ultimately going to kill them.
Yeah, I'm going to label them a pretender too, but I am excited for next year because I think the reports have come out, right, that they're going to trade Jimmy G and Trey Lance as their starter in 2022. Because this offense, if you're running it with Deebo Samuel, whatever running back you want, and then Trey Lance as an athletic freak too, it could almost be like those, that 2012 49ers team where they're just running like crazy. And then you have a quarterback who's got a cannon of an arm, some accuracy issues, but he can fly. And I think that would be really, really cool to see a different type of offense where you've got this mobility that Kyle Shanahan's always wanted. He had in Washington for a bit with RG3, and we saw what happened there. Obviously, we saw the end of the story there, but had some really cool moments and some fun offense there. So that I'm kind of just looking more forward to that. But I do think they could, they are probably a playoff team just because of the way they're playing. But I do want to hope for the next 2 weeks that Brandon Ayuk kind of takes that Deebo Samuel role because that would be pretty cool too because he can move. as well. And he, has got that yards after the catch ability. That is contenders and pretenders for you. So some, different, here to there on some of those ones. But I guess we'll see at the end of the year where we line up there. Last segment of the day. We thought this one would be a kind of a fun one. Best Super Bowl bet. So what we did is I think we looked at Betway's odds. We looked at some of the teams, and we said, you have a $100 bet. What do you think is the best bet to place it on? So, Bucks are the front runner, followed by Chiefs, Packers, Cards, Bills, Ravens, Rams, Pats, go all the way down the board. Jeff, if you had $100, what would be the best bet for you?
For me, I would have to go with the New England Patriots. I'm sorry. I don't mean to do this. I don't like doing it. I hate doing it. But I do obviously respect the hell out of Bill Belichick. And I just can't not respect what he's doing. I don't like Mac Jones. I think he's super overrated. I will not stop saying that. I'll never stop saying that. But I just think that the way they look offensively, defensively, they look like the Patriots of old. And maybe that's obviously, just that confirmation bias, right? Like kicking in with me and a bunch of other people, I think around the entire league are kind of saying that. But for me, I just look at the value of it and I just kind of trust them to at the very least get out of the AFC and then figure something else out, right? Because that really is the key, right? I think they probably can figure it out with most teams, aside from Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes can make some magic happen, obviously, but they've shown that they can beat him. And then on the other side of it, right, like if you just get maybe the third or fourth best NFC team, I can see that. Like, whereas like the next best value to me is probably either the Bills or the Cardinals. And I just kind of don't see the Cardinals doing it, man. I don't know what it is. I don't believe in them at all. And then the Bills is the same sort of thing where they've kind of faded a little bit from where we thought they were. I was saying that they were the best AFC team. And I'm not sure that they really are anymore. So I see it as the New England Patriots as your best bet.
Jeff's $100 going to the Patriots, trying to win $1,100 back. That is bold, bold, bold. Bradshaw, what about you? What's the best bet for you here?
I mean, I feel like for the same odds, you can get the Rams, or for slightly better odds, you can just get the Cowboys. And I think those two teams are more talented. I think they've shown that they have a higher peak, a higher ceiling. I'd much rather go with, if I had to choose between the two, I'll go Cowboys. I trust their offense a little bit more with how they're playing this season. I don't need to worry about Dak Prescott's health, oddly enough, more than Matt Stafford. So I'm putting money on the Cowboys. I mean, I talked about how much I like the Cowboys earlier. I don't need to say too much more. I just really trust their offense. I think their offense has been great this season.
All right, Bradshaw's $100 bet, winning $1,300 back. I guess I'll go the lesser odds here. I go Cardinals. I think they're unbelievable offense. They're going to be back and healthy. Kyler looks like he's back. Hopkins is going to be back. The defense has been fantastic. $100 bet to win $900, and I think they're going to be flying. And I think they've got an offense that could pretty much beat any, keep up with any team, whether it's Tampa, whether it's Green Bay. I don't know. I just feel something about the Cardinals. It seems like their year. And you mentioned those other teams. Braves, obviously the Bucks could do it. Packers, we've seen them collapse. Cowboys, we've seen them collapse. Rams, right now. Cardinals. That's gonna do it. That is the Cover 4 podcast, folks. That's Jeff. That's Bradshaw. I'm Nolan. Luca going to be on the next pod. But that'll do it for now. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. Lingo Sports, Cover 4 podcast on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to show us some love. We'll see you guys soon.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Lingo Sports and Lingo News for a whole lot more just like this.